Hi guys, welcome to Digital TechJoint. In this video, I'm going to explain you about Amazon EC2 service. EC2 stands for Elastic Cloud Compute, and EC2 is used to create virtual server on the cloud. This is one of the most important service in AWS, and most of their activities evolve around the EC2 instance. For a better understanding, EC2 helps you to create your own server, set up your own server on AWS cloud platform. Now this server can be Windows, this can be Linux or Mac or any OS. So what is the agenda of this lesson? The agenda of this lesson is we will walk you through creating your own server on the cloud. We will be creating one Linux server, one Windows server. Okay. Now, as I mentioned in the start, it is a service that helps you to create virtual servers, which has its own OS operating system, different type of operating system. Now, I will pause for a moment and I will show you the PPT slide before we get into the hands-on session. So, here is a PPT where I try to explain the things in a better manner and simpler manner. So if you look at EC2 instance, here you have the host server that is purely managed by AWS, host physical servers. Now on top of that, you are able to create virtual servers. So we are able to create virtual servers that is called the EC2 instance, Elastic Cloud Compute, and you can create n number of EC2 instances of different OS. Now if you look at the right hand side, each EC2 instance is bound with a type of OS. For example, it can be a Windows, it can be Mac, RedHat, Linux or any other OS. On top of your OS resides your application. Now you might develop a web application or you might have any other application that's running on the top of your VMs. So this is the high level architect. Now I want to also walk you through this slide. It's a very high level slide and I'm sure it is the beginners who are watching this, it's a good gauge on understanding what exactly is this slide about. Here if you see the outer region is called basically it's called the region. Now in AWS we have region as well as the availability zone. For example, in India, okay, we have two availability zone. One is in Mumbai and one is in if I'm not mistaken, it is in Bangalore. So similarly, these are divided into various entire EC2 instances or services are divided in regions as well as availability zone. Exceptions are there. When you create a EC2 account or when you create an Amazon account, there are certain services that are global. Okay, for example, creating users, setting rights to users. These are not divided based the region and availability zone. So coming back to our EC2 instance, whenever you set up a server, it has to reside on some region in short, and then it has to have an availability zone. Then we have virtual private cloud. So basically a region will, inside that we'll have a virtual private cloud. Now VPC is nothing but it is a layer where you define your public as well as private subnet. Now this VPC, within the VPC also there is an availability zone. It is possible that you might have your server on two availability zones to manage your disaster or load balancing. So you will have one availability zone in Mumbai, another availability zone in Delhi. So that you, whenever the Mumbai location site goes down, you can go ahead and point your to the Delhi location. So that is how the availability zone comes in. Now within the availability zone, there is a public subnet and a private subnet. Now, public subnet has the capability to directly connect on the internet. So, if you want to make your server accessible through internet, then you will have to go with a public subnet. For a beginner, just understand public subnet is a global IP address, and a private subnet is within a private layer where you will not be able to access it globally. So, within the public or the private subnet, we create our instance. Instance is server. We create a server. Now, if you look at the right hand side, there is internet gateway, there is network access control list, and there is security group. Now, every VPC is attached with an internet gateway. This is required if you want your server to be accessible globally. Then you will have to attach an internet gateway, which will then give you the exposure or provide you with a global static IP address that will enable you to connect to your server. Then we have the network access control list, which provides the network inbound and outbound. And then we have the security group, which actually validates the incoming and outgoing for your server. So there are two levels. One is the network level accessibility security, and one is the instance level, the server level security that is managed by the security group. So guys, this was a very high level explanation. Now let's go ahead and do things in practical. So here I have my console already opened. I've already logged into my Digital TechJoint Cloud Lab, and in order to access the EC2 service, right now it is there in my dashboard because I was working it, and this recently visited shows the service. But in your case, what you can do is click on services, and there is on the right hand side you can see EC2 option, or you can search services in the search bar. So now click on services, click on EC2 instance. This is the dashboard for EC2 instance. In the dashboard you can see there is no instance running. That means there is no server setup right now. And when you set up a server, then automatically you set up the volumes. Volumes is nothing but when you set up a server, you need to have a elastic block storage to store your file. And then we have your key pair, every instance as a key pair, which I'll show to you. Then I mentioned about the security group, which manages your incoming and outgoing. And then obviously we have load balancer, elastic IP address, and dedicated host. So out of all these options are available once we create the instance. Let's go ahead and create our own server on AWS Cloud Platform. So I will be first creating Linux server, then I'll be creating a Windows server. Then what we are going to do is that we are going to connect our server using SSH, secure shell, and then for Windows I'm going to use RDP and connect to my Windows server hosted on AWS Cloud. Let's go ahead and do the practical session. So we click on the button launch instance and click on launch instance over here. Now we are presented with a list of AMI, that is Amazon machine image. Amazon machine image is a list of server configuration that you may go ahead and select and set up your server. Now we are going to stick to only the free tier account. So we have one Amazon Linux server, which is a free tier eligibility, and then we have a Windows, which has also a free tier eligibility. So this is one more free tier for Windows. So right now I'm going to create Linux first, and also if you look at on the left hand side, this is my AMIs that once you create a server you will be able to see that in the list, and there is AWS Marketplace. Now when you click on AWS Marketplace, these are the AMIs that has already been designed, developed by third-party vendors. If you have any of the use case that match with this requirement, you may go ahead and select this AMI and opt to use it on a pay basis. So basically what will happen is that these are all as and when you use it will charge you, but we are not going to use it. This is only for information that this feature is available. Now let's come back to our my quick start. Click on quick start. So here you can see the list of AMIs which is already available, and from this list of AMIs I'm going to select the free trial. For the first session I'm going to select Amazon Linux 2 AMI, which is a Linux server, and we will then proceed with creating Windows server as well. So click on select this. In the next screen we are supposed to select the CPUs, memories, internal storage. Here we are going to use T2 Micro, which is a free tier eligible account, and we click on configure instance details. So this is instance, number of instances, number of servers. So right now we will opt for one instance, and then there is something called VPC, which I explained in the PPT. So this is our default VPC. Then there is a subnet. Now this is all public subnets, so we prefer to keep it as a default subnet, but please make a note that this subnet is a public subnet because we are going to access this server remotely from our PC. Then the remaining is auto assign public IP, which we set as default. Then we scroll down. These are the typical behaviors of the server when you shut down the server, what is the behavior and all. Then we scroll below down and then we see the user data. Let this default settings be as it is. User data is something when you start the server, what do you want the server to have default features. Like for example, I could suppose if I want my server to be instance to be created and my web server need to be activated and I need to deploy certain pages, I can do that over here. Then we click on next. Now this is the storage. Now this is obviously once the server is set up, we need to set up the storage, and this is basically an EBS, that is elastic block storage. Right now this elastic block storage, we have general purpose SSD. Now there are different types like provision, IOPS and magnetic. Now depending upon your requirement and the cost that you will be able to incur, we have select this type of storage. Right now we stick to general purpose SSD. Also make a note that you tick up this option, delete on termination. Sometimes what happens, we untick this and for demo purpose or something, or we want to try how to create server, we create it and then we terminate the instance, but the block storage is still available, which will still incur your charges. So make sure that you always tick this so that while you terminate the instance, even your storage device is being terminated. Then you click on next. Now here you can add tags. So I say key is my OS type and I say Linux. So when in a real-time scenario, people configure a lot of instances of the server, and for each server instance they have a key so that they can easily search that in the search bar and access their server. So everything is set up. Now I click on configure security group. I mentioned in my PPT, security group are the services that enable incoming and outgoing, control the incoming and outgoing request of your instance that is on the server. Right now, since we have created an instance in Linux OS, we require SSH on TCP and port 22, and the source, that is 0.0.0.0/0 means it will allow all the IPs. There are other options also in custom. I've selected custom. There is anywhere and there is my IP. So right now it's custom with this IP address so that I am able to connect from any PC. Then I click on review and launch. So here I can review my entire settings, instance storage, tags and everything, and I click on launch. So when I click on launch, it will ask for an access key. As I mentioned in my starter session, every instance has a security key and we are supposed to create a security key over here. Since I don't have one, so I select create security group and then I select RSA as a security, as a encryption mechanism, and I name my key. So here since it is there in my Mumbai location, I have set Mumbai location, so I will name something like Linux. So I say Mumbai. So let me say Digital TechJoint Mumbai Linux instance. Okay, so I click on download package. It's get downloaded. So I just make sure that I just copy this and save it in my folder. AWS is already a key. I remove this previous key and I paste it over here. Now I click on launch instance. So this your first server is getting launched. Now this is your instance are launching. You can see the log, or you can click on the instance ID to actually see your instance getting set up. So right now if you can see the instance is getting set up, just we'll click on this icon and just name it as Linux. So I say my Linux server. You see it is pending and right now it is running and it is status is initializing. So you can see the server is getting set up. Now when you click on this server on your details view, which scroll down, you can see all the details. Now what all details you get to see? You get to see the instance ID, you are able to see the public DNS ID, you are able to see the public ID, and you are also able to see the private ID. We are going to connect to this instance using our public IP address, and then there is other options and features like which zone it is, availability zone. It is AP South 1A, okay, in Mumbai region, and then this is the security group, that is incoming and outgoing. So while it is initializing, let me go ahead and show you the security group. So launch wizard 1 is a security group for this instance, and when you click on that instance, you will be able to see the security group settings, and most important the inbound rules and the outbound rules. While creating the instance, we had selected inbound rules as SSH. We don't have any. So outbound rules, we are setting all traffic. So basically it will allow all outbound from our instance. This is a security group details. Let's go back to our instance. Now if you look at the dashboard, so you can see one instance is running. You have created one instance is running. There is one volume, there is one key pair which we downloaded, and two security groups. So ideally it's one security group. This is a default security group of AWS, and this is the one which we created. Let's go to dashboard and let's go to our EC2 instance. Now you can see status check, 2 out of 2 check, and it is running and it is healthy. You can check the status check over here, and you can see the monitoring over here. So there's no read write happening, so all these things might be not there's sufficient information to show that, but this is what you can use it. So let's go ahead. Now our first task is that we are going to connect to our server. So this is our Linux server, and we need to connect it. So before we get into this, let's go ahead and create our Windows instance also, and then once the Windows instance is done, we will connect both the servers using SSH and RDP. So let's go ahead and create a Windows instance. Click on launch instance and click on launch instance over here. Now this time we are supposed to select a Windows. So we scroll down, so let's select this one, Microsoft Windows Server 2019 base. It is also a free tier eligibility. We click on select. We select T2 micro. We select one instance. We want one Windows server. Let the default VPC and the subnet be selected. Then we scroll down and we click on next. The storage we select the same, and we select general purpose. Tick delete on termination. We add a tag OS and we say Windows. Then we click on security group. So this is our security group. Now if you notice, for Windows security group, let's name this Windows security group. Copy in the description. Now if you notice, for Windows there is RDP access. Since we are going to connect our Windows from RDP, we are selecting RDP. There are other access also. We can select different protocols over here and provide the access. The port for RDP is 3389, and we are going to allow all the IPs to connect through RDP. We click on review and launch, and then we click on review and launch, and here since we created a key already, we select the Digital TechJoint Mumbai Linux key only. We click on I acknowledge and we click on launch. The same key can be used for multiple instances unless and until you want to create a separate key for a particular instance. So now this is successfully launching. Let's click on the instance ID and see. Now here you can see there will be 2 instances created. I'll just refresh it. So if we refresh it and come back, you can see one instance is Linux, and here also I'll just change the name. So my Windows server. I click on next. So it's initializing, it's running, and it is initializing, it's doing the health checkups and everything. So these 2 instances these 2 servers we have now successfully set up in the cloud. Now let's go ahead and connect our Linux server. So click on the Linux server, click on connect. So when you click on connect, there is a window over here. So there are 2 ways. So either you can connect our instance through SSH client. So on my PC, I will invoke my command prompt and I'll fire certain commands which is mentioned over here, okay, which will enable me to connect to my Linux server on the cloud. So this is one option. The second option is EC2 instance connect. So basically AWS portal has provided this option to connect to our instance directly on the portal. So when you click on EC2 instance connect, you'll see username. By default username is EC2-user, and we click on connect. So yes, so it is, so we can see Amazon Linux to AMI successfully connected, and then it will help us here. I can go ahead and issue the command. Okay, so this is very easy. So we can just use this command prompt within the AWS portal to issue commands. But let's go ahead and try to connect using SSH. So we click on connect. Now in this already provided certain commands to connect to our EC2 instance. Now if you go to EC2 instance of Linux, you can see the public IP address is 126, the largest, and this is our public DNS server. And then you notice that same thing is mentioned over here. So if you see, it's 126. So this is a connection string basically. So this is how you need to connect to using a command prompt ssh-i. This is your key name, which is there in my D drive AWS folder. This is the user, default user. This is the DNS, public DNS number, IP address, and then this is how we connect to a server. So what are we going to do? We are going to use a command prompt, connect to our Linux instance, and issue certain commands. So we are going to update our OS, and then we are going to create a file and some text and save it and view those files. So let's do that. So I click on command prompt on my laptop. Okay, I say run as administrator. I say okay. So this is, I go to my D drive. In my D drive, I go to my folder AWS and I select dir. Here I have saved my key, Digital TechJoint Mumbai Linux.pm. Now make sure that wherever you have saved your key, that has the access. So if you right click on AWS and go to property, go to security, here you can see the user has full access. This is important. So make sure that you provide the full access to the user. Now what are we going to do is we are going to copy this command. So this is a command that I am going to fire. Now before I fire the command, make sure that SSH is enabled in your Windows, in your computer. So how do you ensure that? You ensure by just typing in SSH. Now so this proves that SSH is enabled in my OS. Now how do you enable SSH and download that? You can separately do it. It's a very simple procedure. I'm not covering that over here. The only thing, before issuing the SSH command, make sure you type SSH in the command prompt and you should be able to see this option. So I have copied that command and I paste it over here and I click on enter. So it says, are you sure you want to continue? So you can see it got successfully connected to our Amazon Linux to AMI instance, and now I'm already into that instance. Now if you can see, once I successfully logged into my server, I am able to see EC2-user and the IP address. Now what is this IP address? 172-31.46.0. Now we go back to our console and we click on Amazon Linux, our Linux server, and then we can see this is the IP address that is being shown over there. So we connected with the public IP address. Now since we have an access to our server, it is prompting this IP address. Now I will go ahead and issue certain command. So first is that I'm going to update my OS. If you see, there's already a command given, runs sudo yum update, which will update your Linux server. So let's go ahead and do that. Sudo yum update. It will say yes, I want to update my packages, and it is updating your OS. It will take just few seconds and it will update your Linux OS. Success. Two milestones we completed. We have successfully set up our Linux server on AWS, as well as we have successfully executed our first command on Linux and updated the OS. Now let's go and do certain basic steps. Let's go ahead and type ls. ls will list all the files. Right now there is no files. Let's go ahead and create one file. The command for that is cat, and I say my file, my first file, or a traditional hello world.txt. So now I'm going to type hello AWS. my first Linux server setup on cloud, and then you say Control C to end it. Now if you click on type ls and enter, you can see your hello world text. If you want to view your text or add something, just type cat and hello world txt. You are able to see hello AWS, my first Linux server set up on cloud. So this is a practice, this is something that we have done for Linux. Let's go ahead. I'm sure our Windows server is ready. Let's connect our Windows server using RDP. So I click over here. Now I refresh. You can see our Windows is also running. Now you click on Windows. Here you are able to see your security groups, your public IP address, your private IP address, and everything. Now when you click on connect for Windows, you get this option. To connect with RDP client, you need to download the RDP client. I have already installed my RDP on my laptop, so I will just run the RDP. And this is a public DNS ID which we are supposed to copy, which will be required to connect to our server, Windows server. I copy this, and you will connect with username administrator, and then you click on get password. So here you are supposed to provide the key name. So here I select AWS, D drive AWS. I select my Digital TechJoint key and I say decrypt password. Now here this is the password which I copy and I save it in my notepad. Now let's go ahead and invoke the RDP to connect to this Windows server. So click on run and I say RDP remote desktop connection. So this RDP is invoked. I copy the DNS which is copied over here. I copied and I click on show other options, enter username as administrator and connect. It will prompt for a password and you provide this password and click on connect. Allow access, yes, and now it is connecting to our Windows server. So guys, we are almost connected and you are able to see that we are connecting our Windows server from our local PC to Amazon. So this is how you can connect your Windows server using RDP. It is launching. Just hold on. Yes, so we are able to see our Windows server. So we can just click around and you can just see what all options you are able to see. So this is a server which is a VM server, Windows server, which we are accessing from our remote desktop. So guys, in this session we covered what we mentioned, what we committed in the start of the lesson, that we are going to create one Linux and Windows and connect using SSH and RDP. So which we have done. Don't forget to terminate this instance, because if you don't terminate, there are certain services that is running in the background. So in order to terminate, you just select the instance and then click on the instance state and click on terminate and click on yes, terminate. So once you terminate, it will also terminate your EBS, that is your elastic block storage, and then your security group. All things will be there, but those are not chargeable. But still, if you want, you can go ahead and delete those security groups. So this is how we have completed this session. I hope you liked it and enjoyed it. Please do subscribe my channel, like my videos, and help me grow my Digital TechJoint network. Thank you guys.